Awesome. Welcome to the Cancer Podcast. Today I'm joined by Will Mason, owner and entrepreneur of Birmingham Mason Music. He's also the man who taught me guitar and helped me fall in love with music. And there's a specific reason why we're talking about music. If you're new to the podcast, this podcast is where people who have been around cancer in some way can come and bring their points of views to help you, the listener, conquer the cancer in your life, whether it's depression, financial struggles, literal cancer, other diseases, or anything that might be bogging you down and really making things difficult. So I'm really excited to introduce Will Mason, who has been an awesome part of my life. And you can see in the background, oh, wrong way, I've got my guitar. That was put there on purpose for sure. But Will, how are you doing?
I'm great, Sean. Really thankful to be here and have a conversation. It's always good to hang out with you whenever I get to, and we're not doing lessons anymore, so I don't get to see you every week at the same time. But yeah, been really blessed to be a part of your story and to be able to sit here and talk to you is an honor.
Thank you. And I guess for background, so people listening can understand, could you explain kind of how we got introduced to each other in our relationship?
Yeah, for sure. Well, the way I remember it anyway, and it's been a long time, so I'm sure, there could be some details that have gotten blurry, but
I hope I'm not aging you or me. Now I'm 25, so
oh my gosh. I mean, how old were you when we met? 7, 8?
it must have been around that age.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was teaching a couple of other kids in your neighborhood on your street. And at that time, my business really was just me driving around teaching lessons in people's living rooms. And word of mouth was how we grew. And so I think one of your friends or neighbors, I started teaching them, and then their mom told your mom or whatever. And I ended up at your house. And I remember the first lesson I taught you, afterwards, your mom pulled me aside and said, "Hey, just so you know, Sean has cancer. He just had a bone marrow transplant. Is on all sorts of steroids and other drugs or whatever to help him process that. So that's why he has sideburns." And I was like, I didn't even notice, but yeah, like because you had. And I really didn't notice, but sideburns growing at age 8 or whatever, Wolverine style. And so, but yeah, we had a lesson, and I remember you had this little acoustic nylon string guitar, if I remember right, but all you wanted to learn was Chili Peppers. And so I was like, all right, we're going to have to like level this up pretty quick and get into an electric guitar. But that's how I first remember meeting you and teaching lessons in that room in your house on the front of the house.
Yeah, and I remember those early days playing songs like "Smoke on the Water" on that
Yep.
nylon string, and just the escape from sort of the chemotherapy. And also back then I was in St. Louis, so I also had started to get into music therapy as well, and just all the positivity that music brought into my life. Did you ever, and you've also taught a lot of students, so this doesn't just relate to me, but how do you think music has affected some of your students, whether you know or you don't know? Like in my situation, you knew that I was obviously going through things, but have you seen the positivity of music affect people mentally?
That's a good question. Yes, absolutely. And in fact, the timing of this interview is really serendipitous or fortuitous or providential, depending on how you look at the world. But I just left a meeting where we were reviewing survey data from a group of students that take lessons at our nonprofit Mason Music Foundation. And some of the questions on there were related to general well-being. Some of them were about their family life. Some of them were about, are they getting better at music and what's challenging? But it was really interesting, first of all, just from a statistical analysis perspective to see the trends, but then also really encouraging at the human level and the heart level to see how much of an impact music is making in these kids' lives. And it's self-reported, but that's their felt experience, is that, yes, I experience joy. I experience peace when I'm playing music. It's an escape. We had people talk about how their confidence has increased because they've gotten up on stage and performed in front of an audience, which is terrifying. That's like consistently, I mean, public speaking is a little different than playing in a recital, but public speaking is consistently rated as scarier than death for many people, in terms of their like number one fear. So for kids at age 8, 10, 12 years old to be, facing some of those fears and growing in confidence is just incredible. And I say this all the time, but I think music is the closest thing to real magic that we have. And it's just a gift that I love sharing with other people.
Could you speak more about your nonprofit?
Yeah, Mason Music Foundation. We started that in 2016. And really, my personal journey growing up in a very affluent neighborhood in Birmingham was such that I was, basically unaware of what was happening outside of the walls of the tiny kingdom, as we call it, in Mountain Brook. And after I dropped out of college to tour in a band and started seeing the wider world and kind of opening my eyes to some of the inequalities that exist in our society, and then at the more local level, Birmingham, once the business of Mason Music got up and running and off the ground, pretty soon after that, started having this itch or nudge to do what I could to make a difference. Obviously, I'm not, going to swoop in and change the world or anything, but music changes lives. So why not change one at a time and see how far we can go with this thing? So we started a nonprofit, and it's grown over the years. Originally, we would rent out spaces or borrow space in, a low income area and provide music lessons there. And it's grown now. We actually opened our first real brick and mortar facility in Woodlawn, and that's where I am right now. Actually, I'm in a classroom at our Woodlawn studio, and we built this out in 2023, and it's exactly the same as all of our for-profit locations. It's the same paint, it's the same carpet, it's the same quality, and we now have 100 students each week that are coming and taking lessons in this location, and 85% of them are on tuition assistance. So we raise money through grants, private donations, fundraisers, that kind of thing, to provide tuition assistance for families that couldn't otherwise afford the service that we give. So most of our families pay $10, $20 a month for a service that would otherwise be $160 a month and out of their reach.
And you mentioned, so the numbers that you mentioned earlier where you surveyed, those were specifically from the Woodlawn location?
Yes, that's correct. So we did a student impact survey just as a part of our storytelling for the nonprofit to understand, like, are we making the difference that we think we are? And let's hear from the people who are actually receiving the service to see if what they say, and really it's a fact-finding mission. So if they say no, that's, as long as they tell us the truth, that's a successful survey, and then we can go and do something about it. But so far, very much the response has been extremely positive, and the difference that it's making for them.
And I probably should have asked you to bring those numbers if we had a conversation before. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you have some of those numbers off the top of your head, or maybe what those numbers mean and what direction they pointed you towards?
Sure, I can pull it up. I've got a spreadsheet open right now. So
Perfect.
yeah, I'll try to figure out what's worth highlighting. I mean, we asked a variety of questions, and they were in 6 different categories. So like, one group of questions was about the student-teacher relationship. So those are questions like, my child seems comfortable with their teacher. Our teacher cares about my child as a person. Our teacher challenges my child to do hard things, and our teacher has a plan for our lessons. So there's like this group of questions that cluster together to create that section. So student-teacher relationship, we have a musical skills section, self-confidence section, academics, family life, and general well-being. So those are the 6 sections. And what we learned so far, and this is still in process, we've had about 50 responses so far, so we're still collecting data, but early signs are that there's a really strong positive sentiment among our students and their parents on things like the student-teacher relationship. There's almost all 5 out of 5 on the scores about my teacher cares about my child as a person. It's like 4.9, 4.8, very high scores. The same is true for people's sentiment and opinion or just general attitude about their improvement in music, which you would hope would be high. Like you're taking music lessons, you should be getting better. But we didn't know until we asked, so that was like 4.5 out of 5 on a scale of 1 to 5. And self-confidence was also really high. And some of the quotes were like, I just was about to start tearing up because they were just so, I don't know, meaningful to me. But the way we built the survey, some of the kids answered for themselves. If they were over 10 years old, they could take the survey themselves. But if they're younger than 10, we just asked the parents to fill it out for them. But let me see if I can find like one of my favorite quotes here. One of the questions was, hey, describe a moment in the past 6 months when you felt especially proud of your musical progress. And let's see here. Okay, this one was really cool. So this was somebody responding for themselves. I was listening to music my teacher allowed me to make. And when I heard the recording, it made me proud to know it was me. So Sean, I know you can relate to that because you've recorded some of your original music, but this is a kid much younger than you who their teacher like allowed them to play around with some software and creating, and then listening back, they had that sense of like, hey, that's me. Like, that's pretty cool. So we just have a ton of data that's, those kind of quotes that give us like more of a personal sense of accomplishment, of pride, of confidence, of well-being, of happiness. And I, again, was just talking about this, so it's good timing, but with my staff to say like, how cool is it that we, and I'm not the one giving the lessons now, so I'm very far removed from the actual experience in the classroom. But how cool is it that what the work that we do is in like literally changing somebody's life. Like in that moment, they're feeling something different. Like the chemistry in their brain shifted. They are now happy when 10 minutes ago, maybe they were just neutral, or they now feel more confident. And before, maybe they were a little bit trepidatious or insecure or whatever it is, because we know just as a human being how valuable those kinds of things are outside of the music world. Confidence, we say it all the time. It's like the same confidence you grow by performing on stage is what you're going to need in your first job interview. And so we're trying to make the point that music education it goes far beyond just the musical skill that you develop. It is a life skill set that you get: hard work, practice, discipline, and then confidence and the well-being, because it's expression, it's self-expression. You feel stuff when you listen to music, you notice things. This is why I say it's the closest thing to real magic.
There are two things I definitely want to touch up on: the process of listening to music and how it makes you feel, and then the difference between that and writing your own music and the power that it has. I feel like everybody listening, and you can definitely relate on a certain song that gives you a feeling where you sort of time travel back in time to a moment. For me, it's Hard to Concentrate by the Red Hot Chili Peppers Stadium Arcadium album. But it's quite a simple, slower Red Hot Chili Peppers song, so not as normal as their upbeat, funky stuff. And it's very odd, but I remember the song because I had it listening on my headphones on the way to MD Anderson, about to get a round of chemo, and I was just playing it. I closed my eyes, opened my eyes, and I'm sort of tearing up now because it has that emotional attachment. But I looked up at the buildings in Houston on the way there, and the bass line and the guitar are just very melodic, and Anthony Kiedis's vocals are nice, and the good drum beat behind, and the song is Hard to Concentrate. And I just remember being at peace. And it's a song that if I ever have on my car, I tear up, and I feel that feeling from years ago. It's almost like I'm time traveling a feeling. And there's some weird connection. And my dad even sent me an article, and I've seen a lot of studies on this, so I'm glad that you brought up data. But there's a website called Reasons to Be Cheerful, an article written by Dr. Michaela Hayes. I think that's how you pronounce her name. But she wrote an article with actual data on basically people getting out of surgery And when you get out of surgery, you kind of don't know what's going on because some of the anesthesia or the medicine is wearing off and you feel uncomfortable, but they would give the patients music and
Mm.
they calm down and need less morphine or need less
Mm.
drugs. So there's a power to this music that if you're having a bad day, you can attach to this music. I mean, when I was having bad days, I listened to Linkin Park and I felt like it was relatable. But
Yeah,
then on top of that, there's the music writing, which I don't want to take too much of the microphone, but how for you personally, how is music writing or that you've seen, how has music writing been different as well? And yeah, you kind of get the gist of it.
sure. Well, let me go back for a minute to the idea of like these memories and like the attachments or the associations that you have with music, because I think that's a really important thing to note. Um, I'm not a scientist or anything like that, but I listen to a lot of podcasts, and so I know a thing or two. But there's, especially about memorization and memory and remembering things, there's really two key ways that we remember things, or reasons that we remember some things and then we forget everything else, because we have limited storage capacity and our brains are very efficient, and so we have to decide this is worth keeping. We will let that go. And because it doesn't matter, did I tie my left shoe first or my right shoe first 3 days ago? Like, that's not helpful information to store and waste calories and energy. So the two ways are by emotion and repetition. That's like the signal to your brain. This is something important. You need to remember this. So if something gives you a strong hit of any emotion, like fear, you're going to remember that because that's a survival thing. Like, I need to remember that particular context in which I felt very scared so that I can avoid, getting hunted down by the bear or whatever. But it could be any emotion. So joy, love, happiness, any of that stuff. So it makes a lot of sense. Like, if you're in a heightened state, like in your cancer treatment, and you're dealing with all of this emotion, like a lot of different ones, that anything that kind of is going on during that time, you'd have a strong memory of. And then when you're exposed to that particular stimulus, you're going to be associating that with that time in your life. And then the second one is repetition. And so something that you see over and over again, that becomes something you remember. And that's why, like in musical practice, you have to practice. You do it over and over again. That's how you get it into your muscle memory, into the fibers and the cells of your body, is by repetition. So music actually has kind of a 1-2 punch going for it, because there is the emotional component. It does something to us. It makes us feel something. And even if you're not a musician, if you're just listening to music, typically you don't listen to a song once. If you like the song, it's going to land on a playlist, or back in my day, it would be a CD that would be on rotation, keep it going. Or just any pop song. It's on the radio all the time. Even if you've never listened to it on purpose, you kind of know that song because it's catchy or whatever, but also because you've heard it 100 times. And I can share this from being a producer in recording studios. Like, even if there's a song I don't like, after I've worked on it a long time, and I mean, if I'm mixing a song, I'm going to listen to it thousands of times. I will eventually know every detail of that song and kind of like it, even if I didn't start off thinking it was a good song, just because of the familiarity with it, because I've heard it so much. And I'll say this too, Sean, like, I think another important aspect of music is the way it connects people. And so this is connected to what we just talked about. But when I hear certain Chili Pepper songs, I immediately think of Sean Fradella, like every single time, because I taught you that song and you introduced me to that song. And so that's a connection that you and I have, regardless of time and space, right? Like, you could move to Hawaii and I could live in Germany, and 30 years from now, that song comes on, I'm still going to think of Sean Fradella because we learned that song together in 2016 or whatever it was. So that's just really powerful way that music connects people. It's a cultural force too, like styles of music, genres of music, trends in music. We're all kind of like in these groups listening to the same kind of stuff. And then it starts influencing other creators to, pick up, okay, like Chili Peppers are a great example because so many bands have been influenced by them, right? So it's like it becomes part of how you think and how you write music. And I know for you, like you've written some songs where I'm like, yeah, that's a Chili Peppers riff. Not that it's a ripoff, but it's a derivative of
Mhm.
music that you came up listening to. So there's all these ways that it's just in the culture, it's in the water, and if we're drinking from the same water, then we are changing together. So it's really cool.
I think you hit the nail on the coffin, and it's a good segue into music creation that sort of, for me, it was kind of the next level of discovering music to heal mentally post cancer.
Mm,
So there are a lot of hard things that come after cancer, dealing with loss, dealing with all the medical issues that you have. And for me, learning about life, because my whole childhood I was in a bed, so I didn't really get that development. And it's something I've really struggled with. And a lot of the music that we wrote was sort of about that. And it was about a lot of things, of course. But there's something about feeling down, and there are different ways to feel down. You could feel a little funky, you could feel angry, you can feel sad. And if I need a pick me up, I can just go get on my guitar that's behind me, turn on the amp, and I don't know how to describe it. But sometimes when you pick up your guitar and you don't have a plan, you just let the feeling come through. The And it could be piano, could be bass, could be any instrument. The feeling comes through the music, and it you get time to think about it without words.
mm,
And it's almost like God comes in and just hands you the feeling that just transfers into the guitar. It's really hard to describe, and it's hard to describe the impact that it's had on my life
yeah.
mentally, going through hard things, whether it's actual physical pain or mental pain, depression, anxiety, loneliness, all the things that people really struggle with. It- there is something there with the music and feeling.
Yeah. Man, that's beautiful. Thanks for sharing all that. I think the man, there was a couple of things that you touched on that I want to go back and unpack a little bit, but like this idea of expression, right? Like I'm feeling something, it's in me, and I need to get it out. Like that's what expression is like expressing something, getting it out of us. And so with emotions, like there's so much, um, like if it's a negative emotion or if it's something like pain or loss or grief, like you've talked about, it's bad to bottle it up. Like we know that now with modern psychology and neuroscience. Like it's not healthy to just stuff stuff down. And so how do we get it out? That's the question. And I think art is, whether it's music or poetry or visual art or any other creative endeavor, sadly, in schools, there's less and less focus on the arts and the humanities. It's very STEM focused, which is important, of course. Um, but human beings are not computers. We are biological creatures. We have these drives and these needs. And I think that the creative outlets are so vital to our mental health, and we ignore them at our own peril. And so, you talked about your experience with cancer and afterwards with grief and loss. And I've never had cancer, so I don't have that experience. But the closest thing that I've experienced in my life in terms of great loss and grief was a divorce. And that was like the darkest time in my life. And it was hard. I dealt with extreme, depression and lack of motivation, not wanting to get out of bed in the morning, and just all the symptoms that come along with that. And music was definitely a huge part of just surviving that period of time, and then also processing it later on. So, in the throes of that, when it was just like low point, I can remember like yelling from my bed at my Alexa in the other room to play music. In the morning, I'd wake up and I'd be like just laying there, like, oh, another day I don't want to face, And then I would just yell like, "Hey Alexa, play!" And at the time, you talk about picking music based on your mood, it really is. It's like an emotion dial. It's like, okay, happy, sad, whatever, like angry, like you can find a song that will bring that up in you. Um, and you can change your mood or you can try to match your mood. It's like I'm in a funk, but I want to stay there. And I want somebody to understand how mad I am. So I'm going to put on Rage Against the Machine. I'm going to match my mood to this music. Or, hey, I'm really sad. And this is what I did during that time. I was listening to Jason Isbell and I was listening to Ryan Adams, and it was just sad, and I was listening to all this sad music because that's where I was. And I needed to feel like somebody understood me and understood what I was going through. I needed that human connection. And so I would turn the dial to match my mood. Right. And so then afterwards, like years passed, and I made it through that and I'm great. I'm remarried now and I'm happy. Most of the time, some of the time. And, but I've written music about that period of time and about the hard times that I went through. And that's been a part of my healing as well. And there's a lot of research on the power of like writing. So like just, It doesn't even have to be music. It could be just a narrative, like write down what happened. And I think it touches on that same thing of expression. Like I'm getting it out, getting it out of my mind, because my brain is sitting there telling me like, hey, this is important. This is important. It keeps coming up. I'm thinking about it. I'm ruminating about it. And you can calm your nervous system down by saying like, hey, I'm not going to forget. I'm not going to let this happen again. I'm going to write it down. Now it's safe. You can stop worrying about it. And so there's something to that. And with music, it's also like processing the emotions. And like you said, words sometimes just get in the way of trying to like communicate or think about something. And we spend all this time in our language trying to like communicate what's happening. And it's always an approximation. It's never like, this is the raw truth. And it's because we try to wrap it in these sounds and these words and whatever, but music kind of bypasses that and goes even deeper, I think, in a lot of ways, to just express the straight up feelings. And I mean, it sounds woo woo or whatever, but it's vibrations, right? It's like sounds, and these notes are vibrating against each other or with each other. And there's just something that's happening in the air when I play a note or a series of notes or a song or whatever, and that vibrates the air and it goes across the room and it goes into your eardrums and it vibrates your eardrums, goes through your nerves into your brain. You hear it, you perceive it, and then you feel something as a result. You've heard a song that like, makes you want to cry. Somehow that translated through the air into your brain, into your body, and made your brain excrete a different hormone. And it's just wild. It's absolutely wild. That's why I love music so much.
It's funny you mentioned journaling and writing, because some people listening may not be able to actually play the music or write the music and all of that. But I have, are you familiar with the pen breaker writing method? I think that's what it is. I'd have to go back and look because I'm not an expert on it, but I practiced it. And basically what it is for 15 minutes a day, and I'm not summing it up in the best way possible because, again, I'm not a medical doctor, but for 15 minutes a day, you write about something traumatizing that happened in your life, or something that has been in the back of your mind that's been holding you back, or something extremely difficult and hard. And you write about it for 15 minutes straight, no distractions, nothing else, and you're focusing on it. And if you finish writing it, say it only takes 5 minutes to write, you restart, write it again. You might write it in a different way. And what happens is it's something to do with the actual connection between your brain and writing. You slow down, because to write the word "the" and speak the word "the," it takes longer to actually write the word out.
Yeah.
So there's something in journaling and writing specifically that makes you reflect and get over things that might be difficult. So
yeah. I know for me, like I went to a lot of counseling and therapy during that period of my life. And I still see a therapist because I think everybody should. Life is hard. We need help. But one of the illustrations that he used made a lot of sense to me. And I know this is an illustration, so it's not what's happening at the like neurobiological level, but it makes sense as an analogy or a metaphor rather. But when we have just a normal day and normal experiences, our brain categorizes information and stores it in our long-term memory. And if you imagine that as being like a file cabinet or a filing system, you've got different drawers for different categories, and then you've got folders for different days or different types of events or whatever. And you can tag things as like, this one goes in the category of like my memories with Sean, or this is my category of like what I did yesterday, and maybe I'll throw that one away later. But you have it and it's all kind of organized. And then you have a traumatic event. Something horrible happens that, and by the way, trauma doesn't have to be like you're in a battle zone, right? Like there's certainly like wartime trauma and PTSD that's well documented. But there are also other types of trauma. And sometimes we'll refer to that as like a big T trauma and a little t trauma. But trauma, as my therapist defined it anyway, was anything that exceeds my ability to cope in that moment. So it's like the threshold is, let's say I can handle like this much and something happens that it's here. That's going to, all of a sudden that file doesn't fit. Like I can't put it in the right place in my memory. Like I don't know what to do with it. It was overwhelming. It was too much. And so our brains then, if you use the metaphor, there is a file that doesn't fit anywhere. And so that drawer, I can't close it all the way. So I can't really put it to rest, and it's just sticking out. And like every time I walk by it, I bump into it and it hurts, and it's just kind of out and it's in the way of me moving forward. So that's why you have so many people talking about feeling stuck. How do I get unstuck? And a lot of addiction comes up as a response to this because we're in pain and it's not getting better. It's not going anywhere. So I've got to feel okay. And then we go and look for something that gets us to feel okay. And then we feel okay. And we're like, okay, well, I have to keep doing that because I can't stand it. It's too much pain or too much fear or whatever it is. And so obviously this is a massive topic that we can't fully dive into, but I think that the writing exercise and creative expression is really helpful because it goes back and revisits that moment from a place of you're in control. I'm here today. And obviously with a trained therapist, it's really valuable. And there's all sorts of modalities for addressing that, EMDR and talk therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy. There's tons of stuff, brain mapping. I mean, it's crazy. This is a very fast emerging field of study. And so it's encouraging. There's even stuff like psychedelics and all these sort of things. But to read about and hear about people being able to get unstuck, and that gives us a lot of hope. But I think music can play a part in that healing journey, whether it's creating music, like writing your own songs and playing them, even just, like you said, pick up your guitar and play something. It doesn't have to be something that you save for later, just like make some noise. I do that on the piano pretty often. I'll just sit down and play whatever I'm feeling. It could be a happy thing and I'm energized, I'm playing fast. It could be, hey, I feel pretty chill and not necessarily sad, but contemplative. And maybe I'm you talked about God earlier, so I'll talk about God, but worshipful mood. And I'm just worshiping through playing. I'm not even singing necessarily, but just trying to play something that I think would please my Father in heaven, And so, yeah, I think the healing stuff is really interesting, and science is trying to learn more about how that works and what's most effective. And I think music is going to definitely be a part of that. Music therapy is a really interesting field that I'm curious about.
I agree. And I'm excited, and I'll bring up that article, but before we wrap up, I don't know how much time you have left, but hospitals are also seeing that. And from my point of view, when you go to the hospital, the children's hospital, they're having music therapists. They're bringing in guitars for the kids to just play with, pianos to noodle around with. And and whatever, and make lyrics and make songs, and they now have the actual data to back it up. Like, we've always thought this, it's always kind of been the theory that music helps you mentally, but again, for people listening, music is a tool. It's a weapon, whether you can play it or not. It's something that you can use to change the way you think, the way you feel, for better or for worse, for times when you need it. And it's just extremely powerful. And I think that it's something a lot of people could use and connect with and try to find in times of need.
Absolutely. Well, and we know also that our minds and our bodies are united. I mean, we sometimes there's this like, I want to say Cartesian, there's this mindset that like I think therefore I am, or whatever, where it's like, I am a brain on a stick, and there's this, my body is just like the robot that walks my brain around. And that's nothing could be further from the truth. Is we are a mind body union. And there's a guy that I read and listen to. His name is Gabor Mate. So your viewers can definitely look him up. But he has written extensively about the connection between the two, and how, like, if what you're saying is true, that music helps heal mental illnesses or mental disorders or whatever it is, like helps in the processing of trauma.
Or struggles.
Yeah, or struggles. Yeah, it just helps your mood improve. The fact that our mind and our body are connected means that when our mind is in a better place, when we have a better mood and a sense of well-being, that leads to better outcomes in our bodies. So the inverse is true as well. Like, when we are depressed, there are afflictions and physical maladies and all sorts of diseases that can happen because we are in a low state of mind. And so the opposite of that is also true. And we're learning more about that too, that if we are feeling better emotionally, whether it's recovering from a surgery or just, avoiding getting sick or whatever, that really makes a difference, which is part of the reason, not the whole reason at all, but part of the reason there's a surge in certain illnesses during COVID is just, there's a lot of mental, it was challenging, right? Like, we weren't able to connect with the people that we loved and be in person with certain relationships that we needed. And so that's like a whole study in and of itself, is like, what was the impact of COVID on people's well-being mentally, besides just trying not to die from a pandemic. So all very, very interesting stuff, but music is in the mix, and I'm glad to see it kind of getting some more play in hospital settings too, because I think we're going to find that it does make a difference, not only to the mental side, but to the physical side. And that's really interesting, by the way, what you said about the coming out of surgery and the sleep from the anesthesia, because my daughter just had a surgery last year, and it was wild seeing her come out of that. Right.
Yes.
And it makes sense that, if you have music playing, it's just soothing, right? I mean, it soothes animals. Like, some people will leave music playing when they leave their house so their dog doesn't tear up the furniture. It's doing something,
Exactly. And I remember, and I think it might have been St. Louis, when I was going in for my bone marrow transplant, I was extremely nervous. So got in this bed there. They also, before the surgery, before they give you the magic milk that puts you asleep, they give you all of these calming medicines. But for me, it made me more paranoid. My blood pressure would skyrocket. And I never really thought about this until now. But my surgeon says, "Sean, what's your favorite song?" So I said, "Can't Stop, Red Hot Chili Peppers." And you wouldn't think that's a very soothing, relaxing song, yeah. But they blared, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and then I started calming down, and they brought me into the surgery room. They kept the boom box or whatever was playing. The speaker was coming through, and I was listening to the song, and I calmed down. They put the mask on me, and the anesthesia went through my IV, and I went to sleep, and I was way calmer. So I don't know if that doctor
that's
did
it
that.
Right there, man. That's exactly it. I've done the same thing. So I have like panic attacks fairly regularly, not anymore because I take medicine for it, but I still will have a panic attack in certain situations. Like if I have, and I some of this is panic attack, some of it is just like a whatever, when you get a shot or give blood, like I pass out basically.
Okay.
And I can't help it. It doesn't matter if I'm scared or not. It just happens. And I can remember, actually, speaking of COVID, getting the second or maybe the first dose, I don't know, getting one of the vaccines for that at CVS. And I don't fully pass out, but I mean, my vision goes small, the sound gets small, I sweat, and I will pass out if I don't lay down. So I'm on the floor of the CVS laying down. My wife is with me, just like, she's so kind and patient with me. And I'm sitting there like embarrassed that I'm passing out from a little needle or whatever. But I put on Phoebe Bridgers in my AirPods, and I was like, I've got to listen to this because I'm, internally just kind of freaking out. Like, it just feels like you're going to die. Right. But that was my first thing. I was like, give me my phone. I got to listen to some music. And I just put on this Phoebe Bridgers stuff that was just, at the time, the record had just come out, or I had just found out about it. And it was just so like enveloping and so all surrounding, and it's in your ears and your AirPods. It's very stereo, and as a producer, I love the hearing the intricacies of that. And so it just really calmed me down, and it helped me kind of like stabilize and deepen my breathing and all these things that otherwise I'm flailing. I'm just going nuts. And so I have experienced that as well.
Exactly. So we may not know it, or now I guess we're starting to discover it, but there is a power in music and whatever cancer you're going through. And it's so important, so powerful. And now's the greatest time to embrace it too, because anybody can play an instrument or get on a computer and make music. So it's really beautiful.
Well, I think that it's one of the most human things that we can do. I mean, our bodies themselves are musical. Our hearts have beats, for God's sake. Like, we have a certain rhythm to everything we do. Our voices are singing. Like, we have instruments built in. It's very natural to create music. And you look through all of human history, and there's music in every culture. People singing, chants. It was a way to remember stories, tell stories. And so whether it's drum circles or, the invention of the electric guitar, like, it's just a very human thing to want to express yourself through this art form that's just magical.
Exactly. Well, Will, I really enjoyed our conversation. There's a lot that I learned, and I hope people out there listening have learned about the power of music that they can somehow use in their lives. Thank you so much for joining.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. It's always good to talk to you, Sean.
See you around.
All right. Peace.